At this point, let's just dig in. Let's introduce our first speaker. And we're just so happy to have him with us. As president of the Small Business Association of Michigan, our keynote speaker, Brian Calley, is able to put his passion for Michigan small businesses front and center. Calley had the honor of serving as Michigan's 63rd Lieutenant Governor from 2011 to 2018. And during that time, he played an integral role in Michigan's comeback in partnership with Governor Rick Snyder. He's often referenced as redefining the role of Lieutenant Governor, taking on issues that were critical and important to the success of our state. During his tenure, more than 555,000 jobs were created, and Michigan saw the lowest unemployment rate in 18 years. Prior to serving as Lieutenant Governor, Brian Calley served 2 terms in the Michigan House of Representatives, 2 terms as an Ionia County Commissioner, and worked for over a decade in community banking. He holds degrees from, okay, here we go, Michigan State University. We already talked about that. Grand Valley State University and the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Brian and his wife, Julie, live in Portland with their 3 children, Colin, Reagan, and Kerrigan. And this is not his first time to join us for Summit. About 8 years ago, while he was still serving as Lieutenant Governor, we had the honor of having Brian Calley present for us. And this year, when we announced that he was keynote speaker once again, we heard a lot of really positive comments. People were really happy to have him come back. So with that, welcome, Brian Calley. We're so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm always flattered to get an invitation like this, but I'm especially flattered when I get an invitation to come back. So I appreciate that. So I thought what I would do, it's maybe a less traditional presentation of information, because it's going to be focused a lot on where the trends are and what's happening with respect to the pandemic. And the reason for that is that it's, you might ask, well, why is somebody at a business association so focused on that? But really it is intertwined with our future in terms of what we're able to do, the performance of the economy, what the restrictions and the emergency rules and orders are likely to do and say. So we've actually gotten quite into quite a groove of a lot of detailed information and watching trends. And it has proven to be a strong indicator, predictor on what's going to happen during a time that is very, very unpredictable. So what I would like to do here is share my screen and run through a data presentation that is very current. This actually is current enough to where I haven't shared it with my own association yet, because I just got this updated last night. So the 7-day average in cases identified, this chart that you're seeing first is the gross cases without any kind of adjustment. It's not cases per million. This is just the average, the 7-day average going all the way back to the end of March over here. So you notice that what we experienced in the spring looks like a small foothill to a mountain that we're at right now. One thing to keep in mind, though, I think back here, the actual experience was pretty high because hospitalizations were higher back in the spring than they are today, even though hospitalizations are quite high today. The only one caveat to this here is that this experience of this increase is truly statewide, whereas what we saw in the spring was heavily concentrated in Southeast Michigan. Southeast Michigan actually, right now, in terms of a lot of different metrics, is a little bit better than a lot of the rest of the state in terms of the pandemic spread. But there's a really substantial increase. The other thing is, let's talk about testing too. People say, well, what about testing? We were struggling back here to get to 10,000 and 15,000 tests a day. We're over 60,000 tests now here. So we're identifying most of the cases. I really do believe that we are identifying most cases because of the robust nature of our testing system. That was definitely not the case in the spring, but our percent of positive right now is still alarmingly high. So let's take a look at hospitalization. If I was giving this presentation 2 weeks ago, there wasn't really any good news to share at all. The good news right now, though, is that there does, as the cases start to level off, a little while later, a week to 2 weeks later, the hospitalization starts to level off. So a few weeks ago, we were seeing doubling hospitalization every 2.5 weeks. That has now expanded. It's every 5 weeks because this increase is you can see it's starting to plateau. And I do expect that if we see the cases continue to decline, we'll see the hospitalization decline. Down here in the corner, this is what I was talking about in terms of, I think the cases are about the same now as that they were in the spring. Hospitalization hit a total of 6,450. That was the peak people hospitalized with COVID. And then obviously it was pretty low throughout the summer, and now it's up right at now at 4,240. So it's about 90% of what it was in the springtime. So I think it's logical to assume that the caseloads are probably similar. Although I will also say that therapeutics have really improved since the spring. So we know better how to treat this, and so hospitalizations they're definitely shorter. And so even though there's a difference in the census of about 10% from spring to now, I think that the caseload is probably pretty similar had we had robust testing back then. So taking a look now at the ICUs. So this one here is total hospitalization. This is intensive care units. So again, we see the intensive care unit leveling off. You see this here where it's the last couple of weeks it's stayed even, but it's even. I want to point out though, it's even at very high levels. So take a look in Grand Rapids, 42% of the ICU beds are occupied by people with COVID. So the overall ICU occupancy now is 80%. That's actually a little lower than it was before. So this has come down a little bit in the last week. Out of the red zone where you see Saginaw still is, and so Saginaw at 93%. There are many hospitals in that region that are literally at 100%. They just can't accept any more patients. And you'll notice that their ICU bed census is similar to Grand Rapids, but Grand Rapids has a much bigger healthcare system than Saginaw. And so if you're to look over here at Detroit, yeah, they've got occupancy at 81% in both the North region and the South region. But frankly, those healthcare systems are so enormous that moving ICU occupancy even 1% is a lot harder than in every region of our state. But still, the relatively good news is that it's not really going up. It seems to have leveled off. But a big caveat is that we wouldn't yet see the impact, if there is going to be one, of Thanksgiving gatherings. So that's something still in our future. So let's talk about fatalities over the last 30 days. You'll notice that this is highly, highly correlated to age. And if you're over 80, that comprises the vast majority. 70 and 80-year-olds and up comprise 80% of the deaths. But even in these younger categories of 50s and 60s, it's not insignificant. It's not till you get down lower, certainly for kids, statistically, you'd consider this statistically close to zero. And there are times, we've had long time periods where this literally was zero. But there's so age matters a lot in this disease. We've known that for a while, but I show this graph so you can see how pronounced the difference is when it comes to age-based risk. If you look over here, each of these categories, it just shows the same information, but charts it out over time. And you'll see here that this decline, you see like this falls down sharply. That's just because death certificate reviews take a little while. So that's not a real decline. More information will be filled in later. So looking region by region, this is a pretty busy chart, but I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. So here we are in the Grand Rapids region. So in region number 2, 650 cases per million. It had been on the decline for on the incline or increase for a couple of almost a couple months. Now it's seen its first decline. And so that's gone down. And again, the big caveat being what happens with Thanksgiving, but percent positive of people getting tested is still 15.3%. That's really high. And anything, you start getting the 7 to 8% range, it still means significant spread. And, we would normally like to see percent positive down around 3% or less would be a good target. And Michigan was pretty close to that in the summer months when everybody was doing things outside. By the way, weather correlation it's pretty remarkable, the spread of this disease and the way it's correlated with weather. If it gets too hot or it gets too cold to be outside, the numbers really shoot up. So looking at further out around the country, you'll see here that we've got the United States, which is this black line. And so it appears to have plateaued. This light blue line behind it, that's the European Union. So they actually went higher than us for a while. And then they did impose a lot of restrictions, some of them pretty severe. They've dropped that number down pretty quickly. Our curve seems to be on a pretty similar schedule, just delayed by a couple of weeks. So our numbers have started to come down. But again, just like in Michigan, there seems to be, it seems to be leveling off instead of coming down now, and that probably has something to do with the holiday. Looking at other countries here, we look pretty closely what's happening around the world and what's happening around our country. Starting though here, you'll see that Spain, France, and Italy, the Netherlands, UK, all of those have brought their numbers down quite a bit. Germany's has leveled off, but I just want to point out the scale. Germany's never got that high in the first place. So when your numbers get really high, there's then it's easier to bring them down. With Germany, there's never got near as high as many of these other countries. The big difference between the way that the European countries handled this and what's being done here in the States and in our country is that when they do shutdowns and limitations on economic activities, it's coordinated with assistance to those businesses and employees. And here in our country and in our state, it seems to be kind of disconnected. So they make the decisions on what to limit completely independent and not at all timed with decisions on how to provide assistance to those that are getting shut down. So with the looking around the country, there's been a reordering here for a long time. South Dakota and North Dakota were number 1 and number 2, but you'll notice that Minnesota has taken the number 1 in the cases per million. North Dakota and South Dakota had reached up around 1,600 to even 1,800 cases per million in previous weeks. You can only sustain levels that high for so long, and then they come back down because either you have so much of your population that has had it, or the hospitals get full and people start getting a little bit more worried. They start taking more individual or personal precautions, and the numbers eventually start coming down. Michigan is not in the top 20 anymore, just basically fallen out of the top 20. Now, if we take a look at some of those states that were in the middle part of the country that had such high rates, taking a look at here in North Dakota, you'll see how high it got. North Dakota only did modest restrictions, so but their numbers got higher than anybody else's, their deaths, their hospitalizations. But eventually, I mean, there's only so high this can go, and then it started to come down. So they did a 10 o'clock curfew like Ohio did. and a mask mandate, but they didn't do business closures. South Dakota did not do any mandatory restrictions, and so you'll notice theirs got really high, and we've tracked, what would this have meant if Michigan's numbers got to 1,600 cases, because the cases track to hospitalizations and deaths, and so this is not a realistic path that Michigan could have taken, because we're already, at a 40% of the caseload. We're at 100% of the capacity in some of our regions in terms of hospitals, or we reached a week ago 100% of capacities. Now they're leveling off and coming down in a few areas. So as you look across the board, though, we are seeing a lot of states start to come down, but still at pretty high levels. And our neighbors in the Midwest, these are the ones obviously we watch a little bit more closely. And Ohio is the one that I'm most interested in, because Ohio didn't do closures. They did a 10 o'clock curfew. They've got a gathering limit of 10 people. They've got no dancing at weddings. That is one of the orders. And then a curfew at 10 o'clock. So it's kind of like the Footloose rules. Remember that movie Footloose? No dancing and drinking. That's kind of the Ohio approach instead of closing things down. And their numbers have leveled off too. So this gives a potential pathway of advocacy we know that next week the order is not just going to be rescinded. So the question is, what are the other options? And because the current emergency order is set to expire next Wednesday, maybe a step down to Ohio's approach, where you're not closing things down, but you're setting a curfew. Maybe that would be something that Michigan could do. Taking a look at some other states in terms of what they did. So this 10 o'clock curfew is in blue. You'll see that Minnesota did that first, and then afterward they closed indoor dining and social businesses. And social businesses in this case, we're talking about like bowling and movie theaters, the other ones that are restricted right now. Illinois has not done a curfew. They just did the two closures of businesses and indoor dining. And then Ohio only did the curfew. And as you'll see, these others have started to come down. These red lines, they've come down. Ohio's has not come down, it's just leveled off. But again, I want to point out, Ohio's never got as high as theirs in the first place. So it's easier to bring your number down when you've gone way up. And so if you've done a better job at kind of controlling things in the beginning, then it doesn't go up as much. I want to point one thing out here in this previous slide, Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania looks like their caseload is lower than ours. That dotted line is Michigan's caseload compared in each of these states. But look at their percent of positive cases, 27.1. So I dug into that a little bit and to find out, well, how is it that their cases are so low, but their percent positive is so high? It's because they don't test very much. They only test about a third as much as Michigan does when you equalize for population. So I think it's safe to say that Pennsylvania is not detecting all of their cases, where I think Michigan probably is detecting most of our cases. So this is a relatively new approach as we try to predict what's going to happen in our state and what it might mean for emergency orders. So what we've done, we created some composites of other states and countries when they announced restrictions. Like we equalize the number per population, everybody kind of starting the same, and then how much did they change from there? And so we had basically 3 different types of experiences, and we did composite indexes so we can compare ourselves. There was sharp increase and sharp decline, and then there was moderate increase and very slow decline, and then there was flattening and slow decline. And in Michigan, now if you put Michigan's actual data in here, this black line, you'll see that Michigan's is really tracking that composite B, the composite C, which is that shallow rise or kind of a leveling off, and then a very slow decline. This is actually better than, I would say that this is in the middle. So this is better than this composite, where it doesn't go up as high, but it takes a really, really long time for the number to go below 200 cases per million. I think the best case scenario, even though it might seem a little weird to say this, is where it rises sharply and then comes straight down, and you get down to this lower level pretty quickly. So the reason that I do this is because I'm looking at, okay, when is the governor going to feel, or the Health and Human Services Director technically going to feel comfortable releasing some of these restrictions? And if it's, this 200 cases per million, I don't know if that's what they're thinking, but I know in the past that they've felt relatively comfortable at that level. So that takes like 50 days to get there, not 21 days. And so while I'm not sharing this to say that there should be restrictions in place for 50 days, I'm sharing this to show that as we're trying to predict what's going to happen next, well, it looks like in order to get the cases down, it's going to take around 50 days to get the cases down to a level that historically they felt more comfortable with. I mean, the decision makers at the state. So I've got some example of different actions that have been taken here. You'll see curfews, you see closed indoor dining, and limiting gathering sizes, and various levels and degrees of degrees of controls that are put on these different activities. So Michigan certainly isn't alone in this, but we're hoping to maybe back off some of ours and get them more to the Ohio approach, as opposed to what's happening now, given the fact that there's such a severe financial strain on those businesses and that are most restricted. Because keep in mind, those businesses are, a lot of them had to be closed for 6 months or almost 7 months earlier this year. And so they don't have any resiliency. They don't have capital stored up, and they were hanging by a thread just to reopen when they could, and now they're closed back down again. So our advocacy is really shifting to, we do think that federal help is going to be necessary. It's like a Paycheck Protection Program style mechanism for those businesses that have been most severely impacted. They've been thrown around the idea of maybe 25% decline in sales compared to the previous year, not including the first round of Paycheck Protection Program funding, and in supporting those businesses in the same way they did before, only for a longer period of time. It wouldn't cost that much because it's not everybody. Before, it was $16 billion for Michigan. I think it would be less than a quarter of that, but still, $3 to $4 billion is, that's more than the state can do. And so we really do have to look to the feds for help on this one. And it does look like there is potentially a deal to come together before Christmas. It's looking more likely now than it did before. However, even if they pass that, it wouldn't be, my guess is probably earliest we would see money hit the street here would be late January. So I'm worried. I'm very worried for some sectors of our economy that are in danger of closing their doors forever. So one last thing, and then I'm happy to take some questions if there's time. There's a composite index from Moody's out there, and they show Michigan's back to normal. Economic back to normal index is 89% or 85%. It jumps around a little bit, but you would look at that and say, well, that's pretty good. Everybody's back to 89%. But that composite, as far as I'm concerned, that composite means nothing. It's an average. And we know that manufacturing and some lines of construction, large retail, fast food, dining, all of those are way over 100% if you in the composites. So individual business experience might be different, but as a whole, those industries are operating at more than 100% of what they were before the pandemic. But then if you look at at small retail, sit-down style dining, entertainment style businesses, gathering businesses, convention centers, the whole ecosystem around serving office workers who are not been in their regular market for the last 8 months. The experience is barely surviving or not surviving. So that's why, you know, the composite, it's nice to have some industries heavy in this state that are doing well, but I don't think that we can hang our hat on that, because the 20 to 25% of businesses that are more severely restricted are they're in danger of catastrophic failure. So I think that's where our attention and our advocacy needs to be. And so I'm happy to take some questions, any questions that you have in terms of the numbers or anything else that comes up. I could have covered a lot of different topics, but you know, in this case, I know everybody's kind of sick of COVID-19, but it's also our economic future is intertwined, and there's no way to unbind these two things. So I think that any discussion about the future of our economy and the health of small businesses is it depends on these numbers in a big way.
Brian, we had a couple questions, and I want to just say as well that I failed to mention and invite you to just put any questions in the chat, and we will address those with our speakers. So Brian, one of the questions that came through is, what are you seeing statewide in terms of business startups? So are you also seeing quite an uptick in new businesses?
We are. If there's a bright spot from this year, economically, aside from those businesses that were just well positioned to do well in a pandemic environment, it's that we do see a surge in entrepreneurialism. So we measure that by employer identification numbers, and they're at record levels. They have been at record levels this year. Now, that's not unusual when there's economic trouble to see new business filings go up. And so it's not necessarily, you know, and that's, I don't know how to put this, not necessarily a good thing, because sometimes people start a new business out of desperation. But but in this case, though, there's a lot of filings that they indicate on the filing if you intend to employ people. Because when I first saw that big spike start in the spring, I thought, well, I wonder if that's like bigger companies laying people off and hiring them back as contractors. And so it's really more a representation of people essentially losing benefits. But that was not the case. I mean, there are plenty of sole proprietors and independent contractors forming as well, but there's also a huge surge in those that are filing in ways that indicate they intend to hire people. And so that's I think that's a good sign. Now, whether or not the survivability is going to be any different than what we'd normally see with new business filings is an open question, but it's something we're pretty excited about. And it's hard to track down this early what industries people are starting new ventures in, if they're the same people that have, you know, they're already business owners and they're starting a new one. It's hard to tell in real time, that information. So as the future months roll out, we'll get a better handle on that.
And that kind of leads to another question. When you look at the new business starts, what are some of the things that you are able to accomplish or assist with through Small Business Association of Michigan?
You know, we do a lot of things. We have a team member, or we got a team of 27 people at the association. So as associations go, it's pretty big. 28,000 members in every industry in every county in our state. Biggest association of our kind in the country by far. Number two would probably be about 20% the size of ours. So we do a lot of things. It's insurance and group purchasing and COBRA administration and energy efficiency. And we've got a lot of different lines of service. But this year, we really repurposed a lot of our staff just toward the COVID-19 response and compliance education and best practices. Those have always been what we do. a part of what we do, but they've become a much bigger part. So staying on top of what the rules are, how to comply, how to, when there's and there's always gray area. The state hasn't been particularly good until recently about being specific of what they're looking for. So it left a lot of room for people to either misinterpret or misunderstand, or just a lot of inconsistency in enforcement. So working in those types of areas has been part of it. And then also how to access whatever's out there. We basically took 2 months and put everybody on Paycheck Protection Program consulting. When I say consulting, we don't charge for that. We just do it for our members. Actually, we did it. We even dropped all the membership walls. We just did it for everybody. The staff working around the clock. The team was incredible during that time, and still has, although things have slowed a little bit in terms of the intensity of it. But basically, it's whatever the most recent information that you need to know, getting it curated and interpreted, getting answers from state officials. And that's one of the areas I think where there's been a difference between us and other statewide business associations. Partly because I used to work there. I know how it works and who makes what decisions and how they're making the decisions, and partly because how we approach things. So we're not brass knuckle type fighters. We work with people. We take care of relationships. We're very respectful, even when we disagree. And that doesn't mean we don't vigorously disagree, but not in a way that locks us out. And so information is a big part of it. I would say actually the biggest part of what we do. If you're watching our small business briefings twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, Facebook Live. So I do it right here from the corner of my basement, and Rob Fowler joins me for that every week. You're more up to date than most Fortune 500 companies on what's actually happening, what's likely to happen, what are the rules that are going to impact you, what do you need to do to comply? If you're not going to comply, what are the risks? I mean, there's really nobody informs businesses like we do.
I appreciate that. And I'm totally with you on the comment that right now information is critical. If never before you've sat and read information coming out of Lansing, or read the executive orders, or even gone to different websites such as MEDC, SBA, Michigan SBDC, the Chamber of Commerce. There is just a wealth of information on these sites because we've had to keep updated on everything that's happening. So just a reminder to keep watch and read the newsletters and stay informed, because right now you need to. We have another question. This comes from Pam. What type of financial support would be most helpful for small businesses, in your opinion? And she further notes, PPP had a purpose, but many found unemployment pay, the additional funds, more beneficial for their employees, especially if they couldn't open, such as restaurants, theaters, and so on.
Yeah, I think that if we do see a package from DC, that it will include both a Paycheck Protection Program style funding, but for those businesses that have lost sales. So if you're a business that has not lost sales, or your sales have increased, you're not going to qualify this time like you did last time. But so I think we'll get that, but it'll be scaled down and more targeted, and but hopefully for more weeks. And then I think it will also be coupled with unemployment assistance as well, pandemic unemployment payments like before. But I do not think that that will work like before. Before it was basically between state and federal. It created a scenario where even people who had job opportunities would have had to make an erroneous personal financial decision to work. Because it was, about 50,000 was, anybody whose income was less than 50,000, you're better off not working with the way it was done in the spring. I think that's unlikely to happen again. They'll probably put a cap on it. You can't make more than you did when you're working. And so I think there will be unemployment insurance, but it won't have a benefit level that exceeds what you would have been making had your job not gone away.
I think it's good to hear that. That's been a concern with a lot of businesses that we've heard from, is that if there's incentive to stay at home, that really impacts the ability to hire.
Yeah, it's one of those unintended consequences. They wanted to be helpful. They, I mentioned $16 billion in Paycheck Protection Program funding in Michigan, but there was 24 billion in addition to the state's regular unemployment system, $24 billion in federal unemployment assistance here. So we had $40 billion pumped into the Michigan economy from the federal government in a matter of 5 months. So that's one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about now, is that as we move into next year, that level of federal spending is not sustainable. They can't just do that forever. And so the question is, what does the pandemic economic effect feel like absent that enormous federal response? And the federal response should have been enormous. I'm glad that it was. I think it was called for. And even though we know there were some fraud issues with the unemployment system, trying to get that much money out in that short a period of time, there were going to be problems. And so we'll figure out how to prevent that from happening in the future. But there's but really moving into the future, I think it has in some ways lulled us into a false sense of security that consumer confidence may have stayed high throughout this pandemic, but federal government put $40 billion on the street, and they charged it to future generations. So they didn't have it either. Their revenues dropped like a rock too. So record deficit spending, it's just not sustainable, and we can't count on that as being the answer. We do have to get our economy back. There's no substitute for regular economic activity that's generating value, or creating value. But in the meantime, we're going to need a federal response. We just have to make sure the federal response doesn't accidentally provide a disincentive for people to work.
Okay. Here's a question that came in via email. This is kind of a doozy. How can the playing field be balanced to be more fair for the small business owner versus the big box stores that haven't been shut down or impacted as greatly?
Yeah, and this is an area of just flat out advocacy. Sometimes especially during emergency times, unfortunately, government tends to rely on the big players, and I don't think they're doing it intentionally, but it certainly did happen in this state. The way the rules played out, it was the way the rules frankly still are playing out. The bigger you are, the better you are positioned in order to increase your market share during the pandemic. And so that's kind of a shortcut a shortcut to solving certain logistical problems that the government may have been worried about, like toilet paper and food and just the basic necessities, to just say, hey, we can rely on these bigger players to get this all done. But there's a long-term consequence to saying, well, as long as those big retailers are operating and open, they might as well do all the other stuff too that they would normally do. But these smaller retailers that aren't solving a food distribution problem, well, they can't do the other things that they normally. I mean, that was kind of the approach in the beginning, and it wasn't fair, and it did. That I think that where the government decision makers misunderstand is that they're changing people's habits. by blunt force. And we can't say with any degree of confidence, and they think they're doing it temporarily. They're saying, yeah, I know it's bad, but it's just going to be until this pandemic's over. But here's the thing about people's habits. They don't change easy. So once people get into certain purchasing habits, then there's nothing to say they're going to change back to how they used to do it. And so, you know, I've heard it all, and people saying, well, but you know, the small retailers just need an online presence. Then they got an online presence. The problem is that, you know, the idea of having a promotional budget to get, you know, in the purview of other people, and to do it, to change their business model overnight and have an online presence and reputation that creates a lot of traffic. You can't just decide tomorrow you're going to do that. It takes years to build that. And so those who, you know, Amazon's going to have another record year, and they've already been having record years. The trends were already in their favor. And that's, you know, they're competing in a different way and doing really well with it. I don't have any problem with that. It's just a matter of, when we lose our local businesses, we lose something that it's the character of our community. It's the very, you know, the essence of what makes communities special and different, and gives them their identity. So, and they're the first ones who actually support local things, and keeping that money local makes a big difference. So we do have to advocate more, and we have to do it on purpose. So what we're asking is for people to, every purchase that you make, and starting this holiday season, to think, who can I get this local? Who can I buy this from local? If we did 1 out of 10 purchases local, it would make a $1.2 billion. If 1 out of 10 of our purchases that right now we don't make local, if we as a society decided just 1 out of 10, it'd be $1.2 billion that would stay home. It would result in about 10 or 11,000 jobs. And those are real sustainable jobs, and those are economic activities that are already happening. So I know it's really easy to say, oh yeah, just get on Amazon and search there. But if you take just an extra few minutes to think, well, I was going to get on Amazon and buy this thing, but who is there, somebody local that I could go to their website and order this from instead? If we did that, it would make a huge, huge difference, even at 10%. But I mean, just think it could, if we did 50%.
Well put, and something we just need to keep front and center all the time. And we've got here in this region, we have some unique and special businesses, and they're the ones that are supporting your ball teams. They're the ones that are, you know, sponsoring events throughout the community, and they're giving back constantly to this community. They're hiring the local people, and that's so important. So very well said, and something that just needs to be in everyone's mind all the time. It's just, how can I keep it local and keep that money recycling throughout our community? So I appreciate you commenting on that. Well, Brian, I am just so grateful that you could join us today. I know you've got a very busy day ahead, and I think we are out of time right now. If anyone has further questions, if you just send an email to the chamber, we will make sure that we get anything answered you need. And again, Brian, thank you so much for taking time to meet with us this morning. We really appreciate hearing from you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, and happy to get the invitation. I look forward to maybe next time in person.
Oh, great. We will look forward to having you again. Thank you. Well, we have been we spoke about small businesses, and this year more than ever, our sponsors just mean a great deal to us. And we have so many generous businesses here locally that want to see our business community succeed. And they've been willing to come alongside the South Haven Chamber of Commerce to support events such as this. For the 15th year in a row, Dana Getman has so kindly contributed as a title sponsor. And Dana was inspirational 15 years ago when this event was first dreamed up. It was something he really wanted to see in our community. And at the time he was serving on the chamber board, and he has been very willing to contribute ever since. And we just appreciate his support. Also, Bangor and South Haven Banking Center, a division of Sturgis Bank. We just enjoy working with them. They're a gold sponsor for this event. And Stephanie Timmer, Steve Gage, Chrissy Garland, Renee Doro, and their team. They are wonderful to work with. And speak about giving back to the community. They are always doing just that. They serve with us as ambassadors, and we can just always rely on them in a great way. So thank you to them. A silver sponsor is Cott Sangster, Attorneys and Counselors at Law. They'll work with purpose and efficiency to achieve the best possible legal outcome for their clients. And here locally, you can go over and see Andrew Barnes, and he'll help you out. They work a lot with businesses, and that's very important, whether you need an LLC or just any other business consulting. The South Haven Van Buren County Visitor and Conventions Bureau, we just really appreciate their support as a silver sponsor. And by the way, when you're walking about town, if you happen to see all the Christmas lights in the downtown, you can thank Scott Reinert. You probably saw him running around town with a 6-foot ladder over his shoulder, and all those lights on the poles, he did that along with his helper, Lori Krieger. So those two worked very hard. There's a lot of light poles in this town, so they really worked hard. And that huge giant pine tree in front of City Hall with the lights up really high, Scott did that to the disdain of his wife, Patty. But fortunately, no bones were broken, and we can all enjoy that beautiful sight. DeBoer Bauman and Company, Laura Hayward, Calley, Eddie, and their entire staff are able to provide sound accounting advice and capable financial services. And I'll tell you, if you've been a recipient of the PPP loans or some of the grant funds, or you've had staff on unemployment, you really should meet with them, because there are some certain stipulations and procedures that need to be in place in order to assure that all of that is recorded properly. So check that out. Also a silver sponsor is Laser Property Management, providing full service property management and real estate services. Thank you to Brad Adamson and Lou Adamson. We appreciate them very much. Brad also serves on our board, as you heard just a bit ago, and he manages the South Haven Farm Market, kind of a busy guy. Bronze sponsor is the Blueberry Store, where you'll find everything blueberry. Good time of year to be shopping from them. Their website, if you've got relatives and friends from afar, you just click on their website and they'll send a very beautiful gift box. You don't have to do a thing, so keep that local. Of course, it's more fun to shop in their store. You've got a lot of opportunity to do some sampling. Another bronze sponsor is Entergy, Palisades Nuclear Plant. We thank you, Mick Midda and Nick Culp, always partnering with us, and we just appreciate that. And just behind the scenes today is Susan Deepan, and most of you know Susan was our assistant director here at the chamber for 6 years, and it broke my heart when she left, because she's always done such a great job. But she has her own business, Tandem Marketing Solutions, and she is helping us today as a consultant to make sure that I don't totally mess something up, because this is not my strength. Okay, so thank you, Susan. It's good to have you back in the office too. Then I'd like to show you, we have one other sponsor, and we have a video to show you of some ways that they've been able to help in the community throughout the pandemic. So if you'll just join me in taking a look at this video, I will cue it up. Sure, I will. Here we go.
The Paycheck Protection Program is part of our relief package that Congress passed because of the COVID crisis. The relief package was designed to assist businesses with sustaining their payrolls through the unprecedented economic turmoil caused by the pandemic.
Our mission is really to serve business owners that derive their livelihood from their business.
we love to get in with them and help them grow their businesses. I've got a terrific team out there of 7 basically commercial lenders, and this team is very dynamic, even through the PPP process. They were given the task to actually reach out to our business members and encourage them to apply for the PPP loans, because we felt strongly that it was in their best interest to apply and receive funding to help them through the pandemic crisis.
I was a proud employee of Consumers Credit Union. It was my pleasure to assist a lot of our companies here in town to weather the storm through the COVID. We were able to support great companies like the UPS store downtown, owned by Jackie Coles and Glenn Coles. We were able to help another great pillar of the community, Bob's Processing, which allowed them to add additional staff in order to help serve the community with additional products. Another company that weathered the storm was Autumn Design. Julie had just moved into a new location. Through this process, we were able to help her cover her employees' salaries and keep her business going. Another amazing company in town is Confidential Services. We were able to assist them, which allowed them to bring on more employees to do background checks. That not only supported individuals within our community, their background checks support the nuclear power plants throughout the U.S.
Our experience with this PPP program, what it showed me is it reaffirms something I knew. We deliver great solutions to members, both personal and business members. Our team has the grit. When things aren't easy, they come together, they find solutions, and they find a way to get it done. And I'm very proud of how we served our membership and 4,500 jobs that we helped save in our West Michigan communities.
I'm an employee of Consumers Credit Union, but I'm also a member of this community. And it makes me proud that I've been able to support these various companies through these trying times.
All right. Well, thank you, Consumers Credit Union. We appreciate your support, and that was very helpful. I think we're ready to have our next speaker join us, but I want to just remind you that if you do have questions, be sure and just type them into the chat, and we'll be able to ask those questions at the end of this presentation. Our next speaker is Megan Holland, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for Michigan Retailers Association for the next 2 hours. She will be retiring literally when she finishes this presentation. This is her swan song, and we were able to get her in here under the wire. So anyway, she came to the association in June of 2017 from the state of Michigan, where she worked for the Secretary of State, the Governor's Office, and Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency as a senior policy advisor. Previously, she was a journalist for many years, most recently statewide capital editor in Lansing for MLive Media Group. She is a Cadillac native, a Kalamazoo College graduate, and now a resident of East Lansing. So ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Megan Holland.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate it. So as Kathy said, I work with Michigan Retailers Association, and we represent a wide range of businesses, everything from agriculture to auto repair to accounting. But our mission is to advocate for retail. The reason we get such a broad range of businesses is because we offer really good services like credit card processing, workers' comp, a ton of information, just like SBAM does for its members, constant flow of information during the pandemic, because we are advocating for retailers with the legislature. We advocate with the governor's office, which obviously has been super important during this time. And we also advocate through a program, a nonprofit program called Buy Nearby. That's B-U-Y Nearby. I don't know if our Buy Nearby guy mascot has been to South Haven. He's a goofy 8-foot-tall blue mascot made by the Detroit Parade Company. But the whole thing is about shopping local. So we've been preaching that really intensely since 2011 when the program started. And we have a van with buy nearby guys splashed all over it. So it's all very obvious. And in fact, the $1.2 billion figure that Brian cited, if people would just convert 1 in 10 of their purchases back to a Michigan retailer instead of going online out of state, that's from an economic study that Michigan Retailers Association did, in order to just educate shoppers. That's what it's all about, educating shoppers about the importance of keeping their money in the mitten, the power of their shopping dollars. So that's what I've been living for the last 3.5 years, is shop local, shop local. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. So I am here to talk about how retail is adjusted. I know some of you have been living this. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Can everybody see it?
No.
I'm assuming you can. And, one of the biggest adjustments was starting out was just realizing for retailers, the store I closed in March with the shutdown can't be the same store that I opened in early June when the governor allowed stores to reopen. They obviously had to come up with a completely different business model, and that wasn't easy. So some of the major lessons that retailers learned is it's all about relationships. If you didn't have a good relationship with your banker, you maybe didn't get a PPP loan. If you didn't have one with your landlord, you maybe couldn't renegotiate your rent. How about your customers? If they didn't trust to come back in your store, it was difficult luring them back. And your employees, we've already talked about how hard sometimes it was to get employees to come back to work. They were making more money on unemployment than they would if they were working. And as Brian said, that was a real unintended consequence. And the other major lesson was a web presence is just non-negotiable. There still are quite a few retail stores that don't have a web presence. And the pandemic made them realize, I really need to have an e-commerce platform. So many in the past several months have been able to do that, but it is a bit expensive and it can be complicated. But we just ask shoppers, think before you click. If you can get it from a local store online, please do so. And to retailers, we say it's no longer brick and mortar, it's got to be click and mortar. And that kind of leads me to the lesson that hopefully consumers are learning right now. And that is the money you spend during this holiday season at local stores will make a crucial difference in how your downtown looks a year from now. Nobody wants to see a bunch of empty storefronts. And I talk to a ton of media, and this has been a message I've been sending out, is that no amount of convenience or saving a few pennies by shopping online is going to make up for looking at your downtown and seeing empty storefronts. So big message. And that same economic study that I mentioned earlier showed that Michiganders send in a typical year $18.5 billion right out of Michigan to online stores. So if we could just recapture some of that money, it would make a huge difference in our economy. And certainly we need that right now coming out of this pandemic. So when we were advising retailers on how to prepare for the reopening, we gave them 4 areas of focus: their store, their employees, their vendors, and their customers. And the store, think about, if you aren't in retail, you maybe don't realize how much retailers had to rethink their store. As far as enforcing social distancing, it may have meant widening aisles, getting rid of some clutter, floor decals for social distancing. You had to install hand sanitizer stations and sneeze guards at the cash register. Maybe you had to put staff at the door to limit people. That is happening at some stores right now under the 30% capacity limit. And now that it's getting cold, we just hope that people are willing to stand outside in order to get into the store. And then the other thing was cleanliness. Stores have had to institute a nonstop wipe down regimen, and that's actually been exhausting for staff. It's a whole new layer of labor that's needed in a store. But we've told stores, you know what? be obvious about wiping down surfaces. It makes customers feel better. It gives them confidence that you care about the cleanliness of your store. And then they also needed to figure out, where do I get PPE for my employees? It was really difficult at first, if you remember. It's not so much now, but for a while there, getting a face mask was really tough. So then there's curbside. And it's easy if you have your own parking lot and you can stick up your own sign. But if you're in a downtown, we really hope and encourage municipalities to be really flexible right now with retailers and allow them to have a parking spot for curbside pickup, allow them to have some signage along those lines, because it's already tough enough for the store to convey to their customers, here's where you go to pick it up and here's how you pick it up. You know, it's all something you need to think through carefully. And this winter, snow management is going to be crucial for downtowns, you know, to ease the process of curbside pickup, and also to just have a walkable downtown. The MEDC just came out about a month ago with a winter resources guide, and they really emphasized the importance of good snow management this winter in particular, so that maybe you can even promote your downtown as a walking destination during the winter. It sounds like your downtown with all the lights that I think Scott, was it, put up, that just makes for a warm and cozy downtown. So why shouldn't people consider downtown a walking destination, you know, as an alternative to the trail they may usually take? But do think about snow management for sure, because customers just don't want to be climbing through snowbanks to get to a store, or your employee doesn't want to do that in order to deliver something to somebody's car. And then signage is another thing that stores have had to think about. And at first it was super important. MRA has provided a lot of free signs to stores about face mask enforcement, social distancing, and just being kind. We've really needed to inject more kindness into our shopping culture of late. So, and I'll talk about a little bit about that later. And then, you know, I also want to address, before I get into employees, grocers have had to face all these same issues, but they had to do it on the fly, just like pharmacies and hardware stores did. They had to figure out really quickly how to obtain PPE, and they had to figure out cleanliness issues. Thank goodness the governor allowed them to shut down bottle return rooms. You know, when you walk into your grocery store, you want it to be the most clean store you go into, right? Well, guess what? One of the dirtiest rooms in all of retail is located in grocery stores, and that's the bottle return room. You cannot believe what people will return in those bottles. It can be quite disgusting. So Michigan Retailers Association for a long time has been lobbying to get rid of the bottle deposit bill. Just get rid of the deposit altogether, allow people to put their bottles and cans into their regular curbside recycling bin or their community recycling center, and just come up with a better and more comprehensive plan, because it's a real onerous thing for grocers to have to deal with all these bottles. And it's a complicated process to have people pay a deposit, bring it back, all that. So we've been lobbying that for that for quite some time. And then the other thing that grocery stores had to deal with was layout. And one of probably the failed experiments was the one-way aisles. I don't know about you, but I notice people aren't paying attention to them. I am guilty of not paying attention to them. And when I find myself going the wrong way down an aisle, I just kind of turn my cart around and walk backwards down the aisle. So I don't have to go all the way around to get to the right way. So yeah, grocers, and we merged with the Michigan Grocers Association 2 years ago, I think. And so we represent a lot of grocers, and it's been a real interesting experience helping them through this very quick process. So now we get to employees. Never have you ever had to be more concerned about your employees' health as you have now. you want to make sure they're healthy when they walk in your door. And at my office, we check in with the state of Michigan's My Symptoms app every morning that we go into the office. I'm not there right now. I'll be going in after this to turn in my computer and my phone and my key fob. But we've also encouraged employees to sign up for the My COVID Alert app, which lets you know if you've been in close proximity to somebody who ended up testing positive. It gauges how long you were close to them. And I know I've signed up for it. I want to know if I've potentially been exposed. So we highly recommend that you sign up for that. The app is really only as good as the number of people who sign up for it. So. And then the other thing is managing employees. Do you put them on staggered shifts so they don't cross-pollinate in case somebody is positive? And yet at the same time, retailers have had to cross-train employees in case somebody is exposed or test positive and has to take time off. And then also one of the complicated things is training somebody to sell with a mask on. It's hard enough to do sales, but when you have half your face covered, it's even harder. So we recommended that retailers actually role play with their employees about over-expressing their face. In other words, crinkling your eyes when you smile and just sending off a good vibe while you're wearing this big face mask. It's not as easy as you think. And then finally, training them in de-escalation. It's not as bad as it was. Excuse me, I'm gonna drink some coffee here. It's not as bad as it was when it first started, but people just, were walking into stores and refusing to wear face masks for a long time. And every day I would get phone calls from frustrated retailers saying, what do I do? They're abusing my employee. So we gave them some tools to do that. And one of them was training employees in de-escalation techniques. We hired somebody who's actually retiring on Monday from the Lansing Police Force, but he has a side company in which he's been training corporations for years, for example, on violence in the workplace, and obviously de-escalation training. So we hired him to do a lot of these trainings for our members and non-members. During the pandemic, we just blew the doors wide open on our educational training and let anybody sign up for it just because we knew the need was out there. And then vendors, at first, the concern was, how do I deal with my vendor while they're delivering products? And, can I do contactless signatures for merchandise? And how do I accept the merchandise? Do I even let them in my store? All those kinds of things. But, then retailers realized that the vendor issue was even more difficult because you couldn't get everything you wanted from your regular vendors often. So a lot of retailers had to diversify their vendor suppliers to avoid shortages on stuff. And we've all seen these really weird shortages. And we knew the COVID spike was going to come in the fall. So stores started stocking up on things that there were shortages for earlier in the year. And of course, the holidays always cause a rush. And lately, we have seen customers hoard. If you've gone into a store, you may have seen some empty shelves. And MRA, along with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development and Meijer, all put out a joint statement saying, please just buy only what you need, a week, maybe 2 weeks worth. But if you start hoarding, there will not be enough for everybody. And the supply chain is really complex, and shoppers are a part of it. And we've been asking them to do their part by not stockpiling. And then, of course, your customers is the final thing. You needed to regain their trust early on, and that was a big deal. You needed to assure them that they were going to feel safe walking in your store, and you still need to reassure them of that. I can't tell you the number of times I've had somebody call me up and say, I saw some employees at this store not wearing face masks, and I'm never going to shop there again. Well, employees were kind of in the place of being damned if you do and damned if you don't, because some stores told their employees, if you've asked somebody to wear a face mask and they start getting belligerent with you, do not put yourself in danger, because we all know 3 people in Michigan have been killed over the face mask issue. So it really has been a problematic issue for retailers. It's just heartening to see that people are finally realizing that face masks really do make a difference. So I'm not getting the calls like I was early on. So as far as customers, early on, we told retailers, inform, don't do the hard sell. Serve now to sell later. So whet their appetites with what you have. Do Facebook Live videos to convey information. You know, don't just show a product and give the price. Show them how you use the product. You know, accessorize a dress or mix jewelry, or if you have a kitchen gadgets, how is all the different ways that you can use it. And you know, I know of a couple Detroit stores who still have not opened. They don't feel that they can keep their employees protected. So they are selling by doing Facebook Live videos all the time. And they're staying open as far as being able to stay in business, I should say. So it's heartening that they've been able to do that. It also is a sign that they were probably really solid retailers going in. They already had that customer loyalty, that customer base that will tune into their videos. They probably were appropriately capitalized. So, you know, signs of a strong retailer. And then, you know, I say here, no grand reopening. Well, what it comes down to is you just can't have big sales events, period. You know, this past Black Friday was unlike any Black Friday you've seen in many years. You didn't see the doorbuster deals and people stampeding into stores. And frankly, that's kind of changed over the last few years anyway. A lot of, especially the major retailers, have started offering the deals throughout the entire month to spread out those sales so you don't have people being in danger of being trampled at the Black Friday event. But yeah, Black Friday was definitely lower key this year. Places like Best Buy for PlayStation 5, they weren't even offering it in their stores apparently. They were only selling it online to discourage that kind of shopper frenzy. So it was a very different day. And of course it was very online oriented. And again, we only hope that people thought, okay, maybe I'll see if I've got this in my local store before I go online and send my money outside of the state. And then as far as serving and greeting customers, we just told retailers early on, go over the top for those first few customers that walk through your doors. They are the early adopters. They are your loyal customers. They are telling you, I trust you enough that I'm going to walk into this store and feel comfortable that you are doing everything you can to keep me safe. And that was a big deal early on. I don't know if you remember how that felt. It seems like it was eons ago, but it was only a few months ago. But yeah, that was a big deal. So we're even telling them today, put a little something extra into their bag. Michigan retailers supplied our members with a bunch of packets of sunflower seeds that they could pop into shoppers' bags. It's just a service we do for our retailers. And anything just a little to make them feel special. And then finally, be transparent. Through signage or whatever on social media, tell them how you're keeping your store clean. And, if you do have an employee test positive, I've seen stores put on their social media, hey, we had an employee test positive. We're going to shut down for a day or two. We're going to do a top to bottom cleaning. Just wanted to let you know. And I don't think people judge them for that. So that's heartening that we've gotten to that point. And Brian touched on, already talked about that. Brian touched on this a little bit about the customer behavior. It really has changed over the pandemic. As I said, they're stockpiling more instead of a couple weeks supply. They're buying more, and it has meant that grocers have had to impose limits on to make sure that everybody can get what they need, especially on popular items like the toilet paper. I've seen liquid hand soap being limited, and sanitary wipes, of course. So, that's been an interesting thing. And then also, grocers have had to deal with some weird shortages. For example, I had a dickens of a time getting rice wine, vinegar, and soy sauce. I don't know why, but it was a weird shortage that I went to a few stores and couldn't find it. And so because of that, that's why they've branched out to buying from different vendors. So we just ask customers' patience that, you know what, you may not be able to get the brand of toilet paper or soy sauce or whatever that you're used to buying because of this reason, these weird supply chain glitches. So you may have to buy an off brand, and that's just the way it is. So also, customers are taking fewer trips to the store, but when they do go, they are buying a lot more. And again, that makes kind of an inventory trick for grocers. But grocers have gotten really smart about making sure that they have great displays of products that are selling pretty well. You've probably noticed that toilet paper is getting a more, if they've got a bunch of it, they're putting it right out there for you to sell in a special aisle or whatever. So, and then online delivery. Now, most grocery stores were into this, but a whole bunch of other stores weren't used to doing online and delivery. Shipped existed before the pandemic happened, but you know what? I never took advantage of it until the pandemic happened. So it's meant that they've had to hire personal shoppers and train them and cross-train other employees to perhaps do curbside delivery, all those kinds of methods. And the whole thing is to serve the customer where they feel comfortable. If they don't want to come into your store, then you better have those delivery options available. So, and then customer crankiness, and it really has been hard, and it's been a huge stress point for employees. I've had retailers tell me that they have been flipped the bird by customers when they've been asked to wear face mask. We've seen the video of the gentleman who spat on a sales associate, and of course we've heard about the violence that has happened, and it has really caused a lot of stress for employees to the point where they do get hesitant to go up to customers if they think they're going to be yelled at or even attacked. So it's been a complicated issue, and sometimes it's been hard to hire frontline workers. And, for that reason, we're actually thankful to the governor that she started the the Futures for Frontliners program, which provides them with a free community college tuition in their counties. So, they deserve those kinds of perks right now. And I just encourage you that the next time you go into a store that's an essential store, just thank the sales clerks for what they're doing. They're working hard. They're used to serving customers, not being enforcers, but that's the position they've been put in. So, and of course, the tough part is conveying and enforcing those ground rules and realizing that the customer may not always be right anymore. That used to be hey, the customer's always right. Well, guess what? We found out during the pandemic, the customer isn't always right. And and many customers have felt very entitled walking into a store and playing by their own rules. And we say to the retailers, no, it's your store. It's your rules. It's no different than if somebody were visiting your home and you asked them to take their shoes off before entering. People would do it without even thinking. So we've told them, be as firm as you feel comfortable. If you feel like you're dealing with a dangerous customer, then back off, let them in. Don't be confrontational. But it's been a tough one. And if they don't enforce the rules, or at least approach somebody about wearing a face mask, for example, they do risk some pretty onerous MIOSHA fines or losing their license if they're a liquor store, or if they sell liquor, or if they're obviously a food establishment. So it really could put that store in danger if they don't enforce the rules. So how do you approach, you have to figure out, how do you approach customers if they aren't wearing face masks? in a friendly manner. And what if the customer does get belligerent? That's where the de-escalation comes in. Often we just start with saying, you know what, if you don't want to wear a face mask, that's fine, but I have employees I need to protect. So how else can I serve you? Can we do curbside delivery, or can I walk you through a Zoom video where I can show you some of the products we have? So again, meeting the customer where they feel comfortable. And then another decision that stores needed to make early on, I have not run into this lately, but Menards, for example, limited what age group could come into the store. They didn't allow anyone 16 and under to enter the store, even if they were with a parent. And that's because children touch everything. And I think we're less paranoid about the whole touching thing now, but certainly stores still are trying to minimize touching. So, it's hard to do that because one of the reasons people go to brick and mortar is to touch the fabric or the product. So obviously, if people think they're going to buy it, of course you want them to touch it. But it does cause a whole new issue if they do buy it and it's returned, or if they try on clothing and they don't buy it. How do you deal with that? And a lot of stores have said, okay, I'm going to quarantine that product for 24 hours. They may steam the clothing. Some stores like Elderly Instruments in Lansing, they have a UV light room now. So anybody who sits down and plays one of their instruments, it goes into that UV room afterwards for sanitation. So again, another layer of what all these stores have had to do. And I want to talk a bit about hope. It sounds cheesy, but it does drive our economy. I'm serious about it. Retailers need to convey it in everything they do to their customers that, we're getting through this. I'm happy to serve you. Thank you for treating my staff with respect. It really is a big deal, and conveying hope will be more effective than any 70% off sale you could ever do. So it's a big deal. And in fact, right now, Michigan Retailers Association, Brian talked a little bit about this too. We have what we call the Shop 3 Challenge. And we say, look, this holiday, buy your gifts from at least 3 local stores. We figure that's a doable task that we can put before shoppers. Just 3 local stores. It'll make a huge difference in our downtown and our shopping plazas. And it'll give us all hope that we're going to come out of this pandemic, and we all see it with the vaccines, and we need to see it with our economy, because we know this is going to be a very deep, dark, long winter for retailers. And we're concerned that many have been limping along. They're waiting to see what happens this holiday season in hopes that they really go into the black. And if they don't, of course, we're worried that early next year, we're going to see a lot of stores close. So our message over and over again in the media and our social media is shop local, shop local. So get in touch. That's my name there, which is stupid. It shouldn't be my name. My replacement is Jennifer Rook. Her email is jrook, R-O-O-K, @retailers.com. But yeah, and it is bizarre that I'm giving this webinar on my final day, but it's kind of a fun way to go out, I have to admit. Are there any questions? I'd love to answer any questions.
Yes, we do have several. And we had a lot of really positive comments as well while you were speaking. And what great information. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. One of the questions is in regards to de-escalation. I'm glad you brought that up a few times. Are there some resources that we can access or share? If so, what might those be?
Because we hired a vendor to do those webinars, we weren't allowed to record them, unfortunately. But, you know, I did glean 6 tips, and I can email those to anybody who wants them. Just email me fast before 3 p.m. today, okay? It's so weird. I've been working 42 years, and this is my last day. But, you know, if I can remember the 6, the first one is always when somebody walks into your store, be professional and be calm as you greet them, because calm begets more calm. And that's a good tone to set. And if they do have an issue, listen to them completely intently. Do not be distracted by your cell phone or another customer. Let them know you are really hearing their problem. And then convey that by repeating, when you repeat back to them, or talk back to them, use 3 of the same words that they used to show that you did really hear what they said. And then summarize the problem to make sure that you did hear it accurately, and give, you know, and they can correct you if you didn't hear it accurately. And then finally, offer them a choice and alternatives on how to get served, so that they feel empowered, that you aren't just wagging your finger at them, but they can make some decisions of, oh, okay, I guess curbside would be okay. Or sure, if you're willing to do a Zoom call and show me what you have, I'd be happy to do that. So those are just some techniques that I gleaned from the de-escalation training.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, pertains to vendors. How can a retailer assure that the product being delivered is sanitized and safe to handle?
From the vendor?
Yes.
Yeah, good question. I mean, obviously, I would talk to the vendor about that and make it known that you expect that. But I imagine a lot of retailers, again, it's that constant wipe down regimen. Hopefully you've been able to get your hands on plenty of sanitary wipes. Again, up until a month ago, I had a hard time finding those, but you may want to just be wiping it down yourself to be reassured.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize the whole level of labor that has been laid on small businesses, well, any business really. It's a whole separate level that they've had to take on as part of this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Another question came in regards to supply chain. You touched on that just a bit. For small businesses, what would you see as some of the areas of potential concern in terms of the supply chain? Would it be more like gift type items, or more of the, obviously we know that there will be some shortages in items like steel and raw materials, but do you anticipate anything in terms of for a small business, say a gift shop?
You know, I think, you know, the hot gifts, the electronics, all that, I saw them running out during Black Friday. Meijer ran out of PlayStation 5s. I'm not in the market for one, but I was looking around their new, it's pretty new for Meijer. And I'm always interested in what Meijer does, because they are a Michigan-based business. They're a member of ours. We don't just represent small businesses, by the way. We also do represent the big guys. So we are quite different from SBAM in that respect. So we do have the Best Buys and the Targets and the Krogers and all that as part of our membership. And so I was monitoring what was going on there, and they were running out of items. And I'm curious to know whether they will be able to get more PlayStation 5s, for example, back into their store. That may be it. That may be all they had. So there are going to be shortages on popular gift items. But, you know, the cool thing is what we've been buying has changed so much. I mean, you've probably heard this, but outdoor sporting goods. We did a story on our outdoor sporting good members, and one of our members up in Traverse City just couldn't get in enough kayaks to meet demand. People were buying kayaks like crazy. Those stores are doing fantastically well. Anything that families felt comfortable going outdoors and using. So, you know, propane heaters for decks, and you can't buy one of those column heaters right now. You're going to wait months for that. And that's too bad, because a lot of downtowns would love to procure those right now. And, anything do it yourself has been popular. Pets have been hugely popular because people are spending so much time with them. So pet, toys and vitamins and all that kind of stuff has been selling really well, we have found. There was a spike in certain kinds of musical instruments. So, really interesting things. Oh, storage and organizational stuff. Like if you bought a bike, well, now how do you store it during the winter? You may want one of those rope and pulley systems or racks or whatever. So that kind of stuff has been selling really well. So I can tell you what's selling well. I don't know if it'll come up short. By the way, I thought of something when I mentioned the electric columns. You will see those. You will see restaurants and stores trying to create some outdoor selling spaces this winter. It is so hard. And one of the messages that I know the MEDC is pushing is we've got to embrace the cold this winter. Otherwise, these stores and restaurants are not going to do well. You will see igloos. Just know that igloos are enclosed. And so they don't provide the ventilation that you really need to prevent COVID. So if you do go into an igloo, make sure it's with your family members. And you might want to ask about the sanitation techniques they use before you enter an igloo. What MEDC is promoting is the idea of a more open air space and using windbreaks with landscaping, or I know some winery up in Leelanau is using their old crates for a windbreak, and try to have southern exposure for your space so that you do get some warmth from the sun. It's going to be a complicated year for stores and restaurants and bars.
Yeah, recently we put out to to the public the information about the grant fund for providing winter shelter for any outside commerce, and hopefully some of our local businesses tapped into that resource. And we do have a business with igloos. It's Three Blondes Brewing, and they're doing a great job making sure that they're cleaned in between each one. And they're called blonde domes.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great. I love seeing, I think that's something that just makes me so happy to see is whenever we have a business that is using creativity to come up with something that can be helpful. And if anything, it creates a buzz on the streets. And
oh, absolutely. Great. Yeah, and if you haven't looked up MEDC's Winter Resources Guide, as I said, it came out about a month ago. It really has a ton of good ideas. I think if you just Google MEDC Winter Resources, it'll pop up.
Yes, it will. And another idea that is very important, we're so fortunate here in South Haven, we have a new delivery service, and I love these folks. They're just great people. It's called Move Ports. And if you need something large picked up, or out at a, if you need some lumber picked up, or if you want them to go pick up your Christmas tree, they'll do that. But they will also work with local businesses. If you've got a customer and you want to get something delivered to that customer, if you work out a program with Move Ports, they'll just be on deck for any time you need them to run something out to a customer. And that is a great win-win. They're a local business. They're working really hard. They've got top quality drivers, and their vehicles and everything are just very nicely maintained, and they're nice people. So what a great connection.
Yeah, I love that concept. I'd love if it were in Lansing. Being a single woman and I'm tired of trying to lift heavy stuff into my car and stuff, I would totally take advantage of that.
Exactly. So a business owner needs to be in line with that kind of thing, and be able to just have them on speed dial, because if you sell something in your store you sell them a kayak and they don't know how to get it home, or they don't want to come in, then that's a great source. So Move Ports is just great people. You can find them on our website. Boy, they should pay for that advertisement, huh? Well, all the questions we have right now. But Megan, I just think it's amazing that you made time on your very, very last day of work. I know it's not the end of this. You're going to find yourself so busy.
Oh, I'm going to pick up a freelance job here and there. Yeah.
Well, but you have shared some very good information. And just to remind anyone watching that we have recorded this as well. So if you need to see it again, we'll have it available for you. If there's someone you really need to share it with, another business leader that couldn't make it today, we'll make sure that's available. But Megan, I just can't tell you how much we appreciated you taking time on this special day to be here with us. And I just wish you only the best in the future as you turn in your key fob and your computer today. I am a little envious, I won't lie, but we wish you the very best and we thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy, and thanks to everybody. And believe it or not, I still have a huge thirst for retail information. So I'm probably going to hang around and watch the next presentation for as long as I can.
Well, that is good because that's a great segue. This next presentation, the reason I invited this presentation was because I've watched and observed some of the procedures that they've put in place throughout the last several months, and you've touched on several of the things that they're already doing. And I just have had fun watching them be so fun and energetic and creative and positive. A lot of the things you have advised, and they have exhibited that so well in their business. And I tell you what, I don't think anyone could have opened a business at a more challenging time. They have gone through some pretty interesting roadblocks. Oh, literally. So I'm going to let Renee Paliani tell this whole story. She is wearing her angel wings. And so Lakeshore Trends on Center Street in downtown South Haven is owned by Renee Paliani and her cohort, Patty. And Patty couldn't join us this morning, but Renee, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Kathy, for having me. I'm just going to give you a quick little backstory of what we've done here and just a few minutes on what we're trying to accomplish. Timing's everything, as we all know. And when we decided to open this business, Patty and I were both, we both had booths at a local antique shop. I have a retail background, but Patty, she paints furniture and she does a beautiful job at it. And that's what she did. So we always kind of talked about, we wanted to have a store. And then that was it. And that went on for a few years. But anyways, I ended up starting to research buildings in town and things like that. I just could not leave it alone. As much as my husband didn't want me to do it, I was going to do it. So I did look, the building that we're in, I looked at and I thought, God, that's awfully big for just me. And then I remembered that Patty had wanted to open a business too. So that's kind of how we got together. We weren't, lifelong friends or anything like that, just kind of acquaintances. And we got together, and in our heads, it was going to be kind of a glorified booth. We were just going to open this cute little business downtown, and I had enough retail background that I thought that we could do it. And that was in the midsummer of, June of 2019. So about just a little over a year ago. And we are on the side street. We knew that going into it, it would be a challenge to get people to us. So we opened, and our first week, I looked around after the first week, we hardly had anything left. And I thought, holy smokes, this is not a glorified business, a glorified booth. We got a business here and we better get serious about it. So that's what we did. So we've just kind of bootstrapped everything and on the fly learned as we went along. But with my my previous life and my previous business experience, I knew that it was all about building the relationships with people. And that's why I wanted to do it. To me, that's what makes it fun. And that's how we decided to do it. So everybody gets friendly hello when they walk in the door and a sincere thank you when they leave. And we're just here to build those relationships and give people what they want. But as we got going, so we had that nice summer where we got going and we were just trying to figure out the inventory and keeping the place full enough. At about Labor Day, so we opened mid-June, Labor Day, they closed the road in front of us. And that was like somebody just came in and turned the lights out. I mean, we were kicking it out, and the next thing you know, where is everybody? You know, because people just didn't want to walk down the side street. So we had to get creative there, and we start drying on the sidewalk, you know, store this way, 108 steps to a cute store, trying to pull people off that main drag to get them down to our store. And then once we got them here, you know, we could sell them. It was okay. And we also did little things that just were totally out of our comfort zone. And we learned to do the whole Facebook thing, describe the products, you know, show personal, our personalities a little bit with it, not to make it very scripted. We typically don't do scripting in anything that we do online now. And just try to just be real, you know, and get out there and show people, so that, because we were brand new. I mean, we weren't top of mind to anybody. So we had to do something to keep us there. So they opened the road just when they shut us down for COVID. And then it was all, you know, it started all over. So I remember sitting here, I worked most of February and March to get the store ready to reopen. And then I remember sitting here when they announced that we were going to close. And I looked out and I had all this spring dated inventory. You know, I had birdhouses, and I had, you know, spring clothing and all these things that, and in the beginning, if you remember, we really didn't know how long this was going to last. And I just thought, how the heck, what am I going to do with all this inventory? I mean, it was everything we had was on the floor, and it was all seasonal stuff. So we had to get very creative. And that's when we really started, you know, we had started our website, but it wasn't finished. And boy, nothing like a little bit of pressure to get you going on that. So we finished our website so that we did have that presence. We started doing all of the Facebook Lives and describing the products. And I remember looking over and seeing about 60 bars of soap. And I'm like, what am I going to do with all the soap, you know? So we came up with, at that time, people were really down about the whole COVID thing. So we came up with the little soap with a little loofah sponge, and I wrapped them up real cute. And I drove around town delivering these feel-good gifts for people. And the people people were like, they thought it was great. So I would take it to Aunt Mary and Susie Q, and I was driving all over town delivering these $15 gifts. I've never worked so hard for $3, you know. But we did just little things like that to try to keep us top of mind. And, you know, in the process, we ended up building our website, you know, our followers up. And so that's kind of what we've done to get through it. And it was $15 here and a $30 order there and $100 here, but it helped, and it helped us get rid of our inventory, and it really helped us keep top of mind to people. And people have been so wonderful to us. I can't even tell you how wonderful they've been supporting us. So, you know, when things like this happen, you just kind of pull up your boots and you give it everything you got. I remember thinking to myself, if I'm going out, it's not going to be because of a virus. It's going to be because I've tried everything and nothing worked, you know. And so we just kind of threw everything we had at it. But a lot of it is due to the online, and that is really putting yourself out there when it's uncomfortable, and it is uncomfortable. You know, it does get easier as you do it. But our business model changed really fast when we had those obstacles. It went from, you know, we're just gonna see what happens to, okay, we need a plan. Let's get this nailed down. So yeah, so that's basically what we have done over here. It's amazing to me how all the local businesses have overcome the obstacles and just, you do what you do what you have to do. So even though we're new and we have a long way to go and a lot to learn, I feel fortunate that we've been able to just do it on the fly, and between the two of us, come up with ideas to keep us out there. It's about building those relationships with the customer as well,
Could you speak a bit about the group you've set up on Facebook?
Oh yeah. So, right. So in defense to the, we knew, the COVID was going to get bad, and we were worried that we'd be shut down again in the fall. In mid-September, we decided to open a Facebook group, and we call it LST2. The name of our store is Lakeshore Trends. So it's Lakeshore Trends 2, Little Shop of Tops. And so what we do every Wednesday night, and it's really been a lot of fun actually. Every Wednesday night we get on and we do, Patty usually models the clothes, my partner Patty. She usually models the clothes, and I usually describe them and tell you what they're made of and everything. It's a quick little thing. We try to keep it under 5 minutes, and we show you 4 or 5 different tops. And it's a group that people have joined, our customers have joined, and then we ship them out the next morning. We do a flat rate shipping, and we ship them out the next morning. So this week we sold like 10 tops, and that really helps when you're slow, Yeah, that has made a difference. Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that came in was, what are you doing in terms of inventory? This is a question about inventory. What are you doing to focus on some of the areas of need right now? And I think what they probably are referring to is that with COVID, there's different wants and desires that may have been different from what we wanted before.
Yes. So when I bought the clothing part of our store, that was in January before any of this happened. So things have definitely changed. I had to really shift gears. I canceled a lot of orders and reordered to more of a casual, cozy, stay at home, leggings, sweatshirts, stuff like that, because people weren't wearing regular clothes anymore. They were staying home. So we have had to make a shift there. We also put in a sugar bar. We call it our sugar bar, that we sell like candied nuts, and we sell different caramels and hot chocolate and all kinds of like feel good type things that people like. We've done that, but for the most part, the biggest shift we had to make was with the clothing.
Okay. Another question that came in was, how are you going to conduct most of your holiday sales in light of this situation?
So what we've tried to do, and it's experimental because we've never done it before, so far so good. What we've tried to do is we pick categories each week, and we change our sales each week. Instead of saying a flat rate, 20% off. Like this week, all of our accessories are on sale. Next week, it'll be our Christmas items that are on sale, just to try to, instead of everybody coming in at one time, it breaks up of what their interests are during the season.
Okay. I think
hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. You froze up a little bit for a moment there, but I think you're back.
Oh, okay. So yeah, basically I was saying that we have taken different categories of our store: accessories, Christmas, clothing, home decor, and we're having different sales each week for, like this week it's accessories, next week it'll be Christmas decor. And we put them on sale that way so that not everybody's coming in at one time. And hopefully we can get them to come than one time during the season.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
One of our viewers has commented that your chalk drawings worked very well, and that's how her family discovered you. Maybe you want to just elaborate a little bit more on that idea. I know winter that isn't going to work so well, but that was
no. So actually, we tease about it that it's been the least expensive thing we've done, and it's actually been the most effective. We are off the beaten path, and you have to turn the corner by Clementines, and it's a solid half a block before you get to us. So if you don't know we're here, you know, you're gonna have to stumble upon us. So yeah, Patty came up with that idea when we first opened, and it by far has been our best advertising. And we just write cute store with an arrow on the sidewalk, and people follow the arrows. It's amazing. People follow directions. Yeah.
That's great.
Mhm.
Another question that came in is, what's the biggest risk you've taken when thinking of new creative ways to generate revenue, and did it pay off?
Well, my theory is always just stick your big toe in first and see how it goes. So I'm constantly a fan of like testing products. I'll order minimum amounts, maybe a new category of something. And then I just kind of test if they start to go, then I'll go through and put in a sizable order. But for me, obviously the clothing is a big expense, and we bootstrap everything. So, you take your chances on those sometimes, but the majority of the things that we do, we test it first before we go in and do a huge risk with it.
Great. It is just a blast to visit the store, and I hope that with this situation that folks are still able to have the experience of coming in, and that's the case with our downtown in general. It's wonderful to be able to shop, in a very safe environment from your home. But we have shops in our community that it's an experience. And I will never forget the very first time I walked into your store, and what struck me the most is hearing so much laughter. And, it was just, you couldn't be in that store and not be cheered up. And then when you see the types of product that you have, they're all intended to be things that make you laugh, or that are kind of just a lift to most people. So I think that's a lot of that. It goes back to the relationship that you have. There wasn't someone sitting on a stool behind the cash register texting friends.
Right.
And so I think that, again, a capable staff that cares and is friendly, that really comes through loud and clear, and such an important thing that is easy to forget. But you do a great job with that.
Well, thank you, Kathy. And that is, that was the thing. We didn't have to do this. This was something that we wanted to do, and that's important to me. The customer is important. Plus, Patty and I work our stores. We don't have people sitting here. We both work full-time in the store, and the gals that we have work for us are wonderful, and they can work circles around us. They're fantastic. So I think that was the vibe that we want, and we do want it to be fun. We do have some snarky things and some, fun product that you're not going to see everywhere else. And that's been our business theory that we wanted. Yeah.
I think you just said the magic word, is that you have things that you're not going to find everywhere else. And that is one of the benefits of shopping local in some of these unique stores. And so again, it's a message we need to continue to convey to the public and those from outside of our region who are coming in to shop. Well,
Right, in all of downtown South Haven. I mean, the uniqueness, you know, I shop at all these stores and they do a beautiful job. We've got some wonderful stores here in South Haven.
we sure do.
Yeah.
We really
Yep.
do. And we're fortunate in that. Well, listen, thank you so much for being here. And again, if you want to talk further with Renee or her partner, Patty, one way to do it is to stop into their store with your face mask on. And another way is if you want to reach out, you can contact them through their Facebook or email. Go to the South Haven Chamber website and you'll see their business listing for any contact information. But thank you so much. And now we hope that once COVID is in the history books, we hope the road will stay open and all roads will lead to your continued success to you both. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, that wraps up Summit 2020. I want to thank all of you for joining us and staying with us this morning. And I hope that next year we can gather in person and have a nice networking breakfast and stick around for our lunchtime and really enjoy seeing everybody again. That's something that I know we've all missed so much, is just the actual face-to-face conversation and networking with other business leaders in our community. So I want to thank again all of our sponsors. Without you, we couldn't do these things, and we'll be continuing to offer other educational programs in the very near future. We'll be doing a family business seminar, and we've got a lot of other things. Reminder for any business leader, stay close by and with our website, the business resources for COVID, critical, and read the newsletters. If you're a member of the chamber and you get that newsletter, our normal time to send it is on Tuesday, but when something urgent comes through, you're going to find another one. And we're committed to not filling up your email with things, but when it's a time-sensitive grant fund that comes our way, we want you to have it in your hands immediately. So just read those newsletters, even just to breathe through it and make sure there isn't something you absolutely need to know as a business leader. And we know these are really, really challenging times for you, but we appreciate all of the things that you're doing to stay vibrant and stay healthy in your business. And we just need to have you still here once we get to the other side of this pandemic. So all of you, thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the sunshine.
Good job, Kathy.
Great job, Kathy.